Hello there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today we're going to sketch this cupcake using alcohol markers, and I did this for the Inktober prompt Frost because I thought it'd be fun to draw some frosting. If you would like a real-time version of this tutorial, you can find it up now in Critique Club, along with over 100 other more advanced real-time tutorials, monthly prompts. I add 2 new tutorials every month, and you can upload your artwork for feedback from me. So if you'd like to join this supportive group of like-minded artists, check it out. There's a link in the video description where you can learn more. I'm starting off by sketching in directly with a really light tan marker. These are the Coda Art markers that are available at Cheap Joe's, and I'll have a review on them coming out soon. So I've used them on quite a few Inktober illustrations just to kind of see what I think of them. I like them. Then I'm going to base coat in this with that same light color. So I started off by sketching directly in with the marker, so that way I don't have to deal with erasing any pencil lines later. If you have markers that have some really pastel pale shades, it's a really great way to get in there and start with the sketch. I personally like to do my fine lining last, so this works great for me. If it's not your cup of tea, if it makes you a little nervous to start your sketching off with a marker, you can always use a regular pencil or a col erase pencil, which is an erasable colored pencil. One thing I notice about alcohol markers that's different from like watercolor and other similar medium is that I often can erase my pencil lines even after I've put the alcohol marker down, so it doesn't like seal it in like watercolor can sometimes. So that is an option. You can always go in and erase some stray marks later if you need to, but I was pretty confident. It's a pretty simple thing to draw, so I went right in with the markers. And I'm just using my lightest shades for sketching in like the frosting and the berries and all of that. Now, after I get those lightest colors in there and those basic shapes, I like to charge right in with my darkest colors because I have a theory and it's basically fail fast. If I'm gonna mess up and make a mistake, I'd rather just do it right off the bat. And that way, if it's awful, I can just start again. It's no big loss. So I also like to go in with those darker colors because establishing the darkest and the lightest values at the beginning of the painting is really helpful. It keeps you from having to overwork and keep layering up colors because you have your anchor points. You know what your brightest white is, which would be like the white of the paper, and then you see your darkest dark, which would be that dark brown, or maybe the dark blue and the blueberry. It just helps you so that you're not constantly readjusting your values the entire time of the drawing, and it does help you work faster. I find that alcohol markers can be, if you're trying to get something smooth or realistic, alcohol markers can be a slower medium than like say watercolor or even watercolor markers because it's just so easy to grab a wet brush and spread them out. So by establishing the values in there at the beginning, it really just speeds things up for me anyway. So it's something to try if you've never tried that before with your alcohol pens. The nice thing about alcohol markers nowadays is that you can get a fairly inexpensive large pack of colors. When I started, I ended up getting a set of like Bic markets from Sam's Club, and then I bought individual Prismacolor art markers in the really pastel shades for blending, and that's how I built up my stash originally, and that worked great. It was but that was way more expensive than just like getting one of the like larger packs that are available now, like this one here by Coda Art Markers, this is actually a little more expensive than like the ones on Amazon, the different brands on Amazon, but I'd say they're pretty similar. So it is definitely a great time to be a marker artist. There's so much competition with brands. There's so many good deals to be had, and you can honestly find exactly the nibs that you want in the configuration you want, the colorways that you want. It's really a nice time to be doing marker art, I have to say. I'm going in with this light gray and redefining my frosting. Now I have to say there's a point in this illustration where I wish I had stopped because I did more to the frosting and I really botched it and I ended up having to correct it. Looking back at it now, I'm kind of like, oh yeah, I like those shadows. I really should have kept some more of the white and just like done it with marker and it would have been fine, but I was looking for that kind of creamy blended look, so I did end up going in with some mixed media at the end and then making a big mistake and then having to fix it up. But so I just want to tell you that now, if you're well, obviously you probably wouldn't be drawing along with this just because it's so fast, but I just want to let you know that. I've got my swatch here. I didn't realize that it came with a swatch card when I got these, so I started swatching them out on some marker paper. That's actually the Hoo-Hoo marker paper that I swatched that out on. But I definitely recommend you have a swatch no matter what brand of markers that you have. These art markers are pretty accurate. I would say most of the colors are pretty accurate to the color chips on the end, with the exception of some of the tealy blues. I don't feel like they get the undertones right on those light blues. And also on some of the reds, I don't feel like they're getting the clarity of the reds right on the color chips. But I've never met a marker brand that does perfect color matching on the ends. I would say Copic's probably, as far as color matching on the color chips, is probably the closest, but there's issues with Copic markers recently, so I'm not recommending them because of some problems that they're having and the price point. The bottom line is just make a swatch so that you know exactly what you have for your colors. And that can be a paper swatch like I just showed you, or swatching on label paper and sticking them right to your markers. Whatever works better for you is totally fine. And again, I'm just layering up my different colors. I like to put the lightest color down and then go put the darkest shadow in and then blend into the medium and then blend again into the lightest color if I need to. That technique is called priming and it works really well. Now here I'm throwing a shadow under the cupcake and then a darker shadow where the cupcake touches the surface. That's called the occlusional shadow, and it's always darkest right where the object touches another object. So keep that in mind if you're having problems with your shadows or with your objects feeling like they're hovering or levitating over the surface and not really grounded and weighty and heavy. It's probably like an issue with your occlusional shadow. Just make sure it's in there and it's nice and strong. And I also like to take any grays that I use and use them throughout the piece and layer them up, because alcohol markers are probably the most transparent medium you're going to find. You can layer up infinitely to get exactly the shade you want. And something I want to mention, because this is it's a 120 set that I'm using, which is a lot of colors, but it's not going to have every color. And when you're kind of faced in you can't find exactly the perfect color you want, when you're faced in that situation, try to find something that's the correct value that you want, and then push the color with other markers from there, because value is much more important than color. If you've got your value right, the picture will appear right. If you've got your color right but the value wrong, it's not going to look right. You know what I mean? Value is king. Value is the most important thing. And if you can only afford a small set of markers, get a set of cool grays and just do grayscale with your markers. You will learn so much from that by the time you go to invest in colored markers, you're going to be a pro. So that would be my budget-friendly tip. And you can get a set of grayscale markers from most brands pretty affordably, like on Amazon or at any of your large art supply retailers. Just go for the grays. And I would say cool grays just because I find cool grays to be a little bit more versatile than warm grays or neutral grays even. They just seem to, you can layer up over a cool gray without it getting kind of muddy and brown, which works out well if you're limited. Now I like having a variety of different gray undertones, but it's certainly not necessary. And I mean, you may find you don't use grays much at all if you have like 300 markers, because you can get exactly the saturation and the color that you want, and you don't need to layer so much. But learning how to use those grays, learning your values, is probably one of the best experiences that you can have as a marker artist. In fact, that's the first lesson in my alcohol marker workshop that I have on sale through the end of October 2023. If you want to check it out, I'll put a link to that in the video description as well. We start off using grays because I think it's so important to learn how to see your values, put down the values, and you can do so much with gray if you don't have anything else. And I think a lot of people don't even use grays because they've got a big pack with all the colors, so they don't need to use the grays, but it will teach you so much. So if you get the time, if you get the inclination, don't skip it, give it a try and play with that. So I'm starting off with a white pencil here as far as my mixed media additions, because I can add that waxy texture to the parchment paper with that, and I can also add some of those creamy highlights on top of the frosting. Now I could have just stopped here with the white pencil, and honestly, I think it has a pretty nice finished look to it, but I decided I wanted to make a little bit more complex textures and colors, so I'm going in with this kind of like a yellow ochre pencil and just kind of softly glazing over my colors. Now these are Prismacolor color pencils. They are a wax-based pencil, so they're a little more opaque than say a polychromos or an oil-based pencil. You can use whatever you like. I like a wax-based pencil for going on top of my marker and my like watercolor work personally, just because it's got a little bit of body to it. It's got a little bit of opacity, and it can make the appearance of blending if I need to. It can also cover up mistakes a little bit more than say like a oil-based pencil, but everyone has their favorites. Use whatever you want. I do like a soft pencil, especially on marker paper, because it's so smooth that it almost takes kind of a softer pencil for it to grip, for it to grab and lay down on the paper. So that's the other preference that I have there. But honestly, any pencils you have are going to be fine. Like I just grabbed this Arteza wax pencil from my pencil rack because I didn't have the color I needed in Prismacolor. And yeah, I just keep them all together in a rack by my desk, and I just grab them as needed. And now I'm using a gel pen to throw in some nice bright white highlights. And honestly, I probably should have stopped here. So then you're going to see me kind of make a big mess and then spend some extra time correcting it. So oftentimes I feel like, oh, this piece would have taken me, this took me just under an hour. I'm like, oh, this would have taken me about 40 minutes if I didn't make that big mistake and just stopped when I should have stopped. But you know what? Hindsight's 20/20, and the place you're going to learn the most when you're creating art is when you make a mistake and when you have to correct those mistakes. That's where the real learning happens. That in the drawing process. Now here I put in some white paint pen, more ink came out than I wanted to, so I'm trying to blend it out, and I am making a mess. It's getting way too bright. And so I'm like, well, I'm in it now, in for a penny, in for a pound, as they say, and I'm going to add more. And so I'm like, well, okay, I'm just going to try to blend everything together and then go back with some pencil and try to pull it back. Now, I want to talk a little bit about mixed media here because I know some of you aren't going to take Critique Club, and I just want to make sure you know this. When you're doing mixed media with markers and you want to go back in with the marker, you want to be careful because you will pick up some of that media with your marker. Now, your alcohol markers contain alcohol, which is a solvent. Alcohol will break down the wax in the colored pencils and smooth out that pigment. It will break down acrylic paint. That's why if you get acrylic paint on your clothing and it dries, you can put alcohol on it and you can lift a stain out. It's the same thing with your media on your paper. So if I'm going over here with an alcohol marker, the nib of that marker is going to pick up the pen, it's going to pick up the pencil, and if I don't do anything to clean that nib off, if I just cap it up, I could clog that nib. So I'm scribbling this on a scrap of paper to make sure I get any of that white acrylic paint pen, gel pen, colored pencil off of that nib before I cap that up and store it. So just please remember that. And if your markers are very dear to you, don't use them on top of another media because they will kind of dissolve it and they have the potential of clogging the nib, or use a chisel nib, which is a little bit more hardy if you're having issues like that. So now I'm going to do some fine lining. I'm using the Unipen by Mitsubishi Pencil Company. I just bought a 4-pack that had brown, 2 shades of gray, and black. And I was just kind of crisping up some of the lines with that. I used it for the cupcake wrapper as well earlier. And there you have it. I'm happy with the way this came out. It was a lot of fun, even with the big botching at the end. It was fun. And if you like this and would like to learn more, check it out in Critique Club. Thanks for watching. Until next time, happy crafting. Bye.